Tonight on CBC Vancouver News.
You're just looking and thinking, where do I begin? Who do I ask for help?
Plans for evacuees to return home, but what they're going back to is far different from what they left. Also,
when we need help, we call 911, and we must know that help is on the way quickly.
more paramedics coming to BC and the increased responsibility they're being given. And
it's almost kind of emotional to see everyone's faces.
CBC British Columbia's annual Food Bank Day tops 1 million and counting.
This is CBC Vancouver News.
Good evening and thanks for joining us. With floodwaters receding in Abbotsford, the city has unveiled plans to allow people to return home for good. Evacuation orders are now lifted for nearly 200 homes in the Sumas Prairie. But as John Hernandez reports, not everyone can go back just yet, and they don't have much left to see either.
It's stuff, it doesn't matter, but it's just that overwhelming sense of not knowing where to start and what to do.
It's been a chaotic few weeks for Trina Enns, an odyssey that started with a dramatic boat rescue when she was trapped by rising floodwaters on Whatcom Road.
And as we're sitting on Whatcom Road, the water is coming up over the road from the field and rushing under the car to the other side.
Today, she's going back to survey the damage at her Sumas Prairie home, which at one point was submerged by about half a meter of water.
The house just reeked. And yeah, dirt everywhere, and you're just looking and thinking, where do I begin? Who do I ask for help?
It's since been gutted, and for now it is uninhabitable, and the property is still under evacuation order. But today, some good news for people on the north end of the prairie.
I am lifting the evacuation order for the north area of Sumas Prairie, effective immediately.
The city has unveiled a return-to-home plan as floodwaters receded another 30 millimeters since yesterday. Officials are getting a better picture on the toll the disaster took on farms, and in some cases, major losses were avoided.
98% of cows from the Sumas Prairie survived the flood. This is really due to farmers working together and communities making sure that they had those farmers' backs.
But the same can't be said for homes, many of which are destroyed and won't qualify for flood insurance.
We know that for many of the residents, returning to their homes and farms will not be easy.
In the coming days, the city says it plans to set up potable water and debris management in the flood zone, with more evacuation orders lifting in the days ahead. For residents like Enns, it will be much longer before spending a night at home.
It's a matter of waiting for it to be rebuilt. Yeah, so it'll be a long time, months, for sure.
As for the rebuild, the city says residents will need to appeal to provincial and federal governments for financial aid. John Hernandez, CBC News, Abbotsford.
Hundreds of Canadian military troops are also in the area, helping clean up extensive flood damage and making crucial deliveries to remote areas. We're told personnel has airlifted food and other supplies to remote communities, including 7 First Nations on Vancouver Island and in the interior. They've been transporting medical staff and have delivered more than 20,000 pounds of equipment, a lot of that used for sandbagging. Troops have also helped to save 30,000 chickens from a poultry farm after it lost power. They remain in BC for another 2 weeks, and then it's up to the province if they stay beyond that. Well, despite drier conditions, flooding continues to impact parts of the Fraser Valley. More than 50 of the properties in the Hatzick Prairie area have been placed on evacuation because road access is severely limited. Many other properties remain on evacuation alert around there. This area is north of Highway 7 to the east of Mission and northwest from Chilliwack. Log and debris jams are backing up a number of creeks, leading to rising water levels. And we've just gotten word another 20 properties are also on order nearby. Meanwhile, the water situation in Merritt has stabilized and more city residents can now safely return home.
Very exciting news today. We've got certification from Interior Health to move the whole town onto a boil water advisory.
Residents are being told to boil water for 60 seconds. Now, that's a big improvement as they were not allowed to use the water at all before, even to flush toilets. Multiple tests have shown significant improvements to the system, and boiling the water will kill any bacteria in the existing water system. Over the past 3 weeks, we've been learning a lot about flood management. Now, from a historical lake to the role of levees and pump stations, we know how key it all is. Now, some landowners and municipalities are calling on the province to repair and upgrade more than 175 dikes. As Brady Strachan reports, these aging structures are considered orphaned because no government is taking responsibility for them.
A small river runs through Bev Greenwell's hayfield east of Princeton.
Taking all the highway fencing and this.
2 weeks ago, an aging dike along the river gave way. Rushing water has been eroding her property ever since.
The hayfield's a mess. It's covered in debris, logs and trees with roots. We found half a boat. That'll all have to be removed.
The dike was built long before Greenwell bought the property 2 decades ago. It's known as an orphan dike, not managed or maintained by any level of government. And Greenwell says she's not able to build it up to protect her land.
Well, we would have liked to, but the bureaucracy for touching a dam or a dike or anything near water, it gets pretty thick.
There are more than 175 orphan dikes in BC, many built several decades ago under emergency flood conditions. A recent report found many of them have degraded over time and no longer offer reliable flood protection. That's the issue 40 minutes away near the village of Calamitous. The recent floods brought water pouring over the dikes and into this trailer park.
You see the same over and over and over again. In the meantime, we're losing integrity on these orphan dikes.
The mayor says he's been lobbying for help from the province for a decade.
This isn't going to go away, so you can invest your money and prevent the loss of life and assets, or you can keep doing what you've been doing for the last 50 years, really, and wait until some catastrophe happens.
The province says it's aware of the issue and has hinted at changes to come in legislation next year.
And obviously the issue of orphan dikes is of significant importance.
But at an estimated cost of more than $800 million to upgrade BC's orphaned dikes, there's no telling how long landowners and communities will have to live with the failing flood barriers. Brady Strachan, CBC News, Princeton, British Columbia.
BC Highway Patrol is on the lookout for a truck driver caught on tape taking some hair-raising risks on the 5A outside of Princeton. Take a look. This video taken yesterday shows the semi-truck crossing double yellow lines around a bend as the driver passes other vehicles. This despite the 2-lane road being busier than ever because it links to Highway 3, now serving as the only connection between the Lower Mainland and the interior. The Ministry of Transportation says it is following up. Now, dairy and poultry farmers are also getting back to work near Abbotsford, with many still having a lot of water deep in their fields. Now they're demanding better warnings in the event of future flooding. Yvette Brend spent time with farmers as they start the long process of rebuilding.
The cows are back in the barn, the calves in their pens. But the flood has left a mark.
What went through your heart when you watched those images of farmers trying to wrestle cows onto boats? I mean,
my heart broke. 2 weeks ago, the Meyer family went to bed with no idea they'd wake to a water-filled basement.
I was terrified. It was everything. All of our memories were down there.
Calls to emergency responders for help were answered 14 hours later. By that time, friends had already ferried the family to safety. They were shocked how fast the water rose.
If Sumas, Washington can have a siren, we need to have something to indicate that. And it's just not fair that none of us on the Sumas flats were given notice about this.
By that night, officials pleaded with people to evacuate.
They want to stay behind and protect what they have spent their whole life building. I get that. But nothing is worth your life. I'm speaking personally now. So I just implore anyone who is listening to this to please heed the evacuation order and leave tonight. Tomorrow morning may be too late.
But many were not warned fast enough.
We still have friends that are underwater. We still have multiple friends that have lost so much. They've lost their house, they've lost their animals, they've lost everything.
Hundreds of people ended up stranded in need of rescue.
This is our livelihood. My husband and my brother-in-law and our children all risked their lives to come back to make sure our animals were safe. And we just need to hold someone accountable to prepare if there is another flood. Whether that be provincial or federal, someone needs to be held accountable.
She says she knows they got lucky, but next time, they'd rather be warned. Yvette Brand, CBC News, Sumas Prairie.
And we just saw in that story some Brussels sprouts totally underwater, just a little bit sticking out at the top. And those floods have really impacted supply at local food banks in BC too. And Joe, today was our annual food bank day here at the CBC. A little different though than usual.
Yes, it was, Anita, but you're right. It couldn't come sort of at a more poignant time with so many extra people needing an extra hand this year. I really felt it though. You know, I had my meet and greet earlier today and just the outpouring of support. I hadn't really had a chance to talk about the severe weather events that seem to be unfolding back to back. So it meant a lot to me to be able to share that sort of screen to screen with many of you. And wouldn't you know it, we've got the next one unfolding. It isn't going to be a huge impact. Sorry about that. Let me show you the satellite and radar because it is moving in as we speak. And yes, it is snow. We've got a cooler air mass in place. The first brush of precip hitting the west coast of the island, and you can see it changing over to snow around the Port Renfrew area. So special weather statement in place for everyone in white. That includes Metro Vancouver, much of the Fraser Valley, but eastern Fraser Valley out towards the mountain passes, that's actually a snowfall warning for 5 to 15 centimeters. And this is overnight tonight into tomorrow morning. So just taking you through our first real hit of winter. I've chosen the European model, which is often a little better at snow forecasting. There is still a chance, though, that we could see snow down to sea level overnight tonight. The best chance, though, is above 200 meters, Anita, tomorrow morning for a couple centimeters, even across Metro Vancouver. But for the Fraser Valley, while any inclement weather isn't going to be great news for those out of their homes and recovering, this snow and cold temperatures really going to help the drainage, and that's going to help water levels return back to normal faster. So there is that.
Okay, glad to have some good news for sure. Thanks, Joe.
You're welcome.
Well, the province is hiring 150 more first responders and empowering paramedics and firefighters to do more in emergency situations.
What this means for people, and that's the most important thing, is when it's a life and death situation, first responders who respond to medical emergencies will be better prepared and trained and equipped to manage it all and get you through the most critical moment of your life.
In the field, paramedics can use ultrasounds and provide needle decompressions. Firefighters can take blood pressure and run other diagnostic tests. In terms of staffing, the province has hired an additional 85 paramedics and 65 full-time 911 dispatchers. Emergency responders have said they are overburdened as they battle on the front lines of multiple crises, including the toxic drug supply and a global pandemic. The province also says it is bolstering the mental health supports available for frontline staff and their families. Well, the catastrophe-plagued cargo ship that caught fire and shedded 109 containers into the sea is now pulling anchor and headed to Nanaimo. The Canadian Coast Guard has confirmed the MV Zim Kingston will dock at Duke Point. From there, the Port of Nanaimo will manage the offloading and disposal of damaged containers. Now, those containers went overboard in October during extreme weather. So far, only 4 have actually been located. Surrey RCMP is investigating several incidents involving rocks thrown from a pedestrian overpass on Highway 99. No one was injured, but several vehicles, including a transit bus, were hit and damaged. In one case, a rock the size of a baseball hit a moving vehicle. Police say they know of several incidents since last Friday at the pedestrian overpass near the 32nd Avenue and King George Boulevard exits in South Surrey. Anyone with information is asked to call Surrey RCMP. Now on to the latest update on COVID-19 in our province. The daily COVID case count in BC shot back up to more than 400 today. 6 more people have died from the virus. Patients in hospital have been dropping as of late. Now we're down to 276. Less than 100 are in intensive care. Another steep increase in first doses today. It's now at 85%. And surely the reason why that vaccination rate has actually gone from 90% to 85% is because of those hundreds of thousands of young kids now being factored into the count. Our Justin McElroy joins us with the latest on that. Justin, how is that vaccination campaign going?
Yeah, Anita, we've gone from people being able to register for their children getting a first vaccine shot to getting scheduled for an actual day. And now those shots are starting to happen. And if you look at this chart, over the past few days, we've been seeing that number steadily increase from about 1,000 at the beginning of the week to more than 5,000 yesterday. So we're going to continue to see these numbers probably ramp up for a few more weeks. We'll see exactly where we crest there. And why is it so important, again, for these shots to be delivered? Well, if you look at transmission in this next chart for all age groups in BC, you see those highest lines right there. That's for 9 to 11-year-olds. The next highest is 5 to 8. Those are the only 2 groups in those charts that haven't had the option until now of getting vaccinated. So the provincial government hoping that in the weeks to come, those 2 higher chart lines start going down to where the rest of them are. Then we will see our overall numbers go down, and the risk for people living in multi-general households of getting of testing positive, even perhaps if they are vaccinated in the first place.
Yeah, we do have a lot of those multi-generational households in British Columbia. Okay, Justin, kids are getting their first shots, but we're also getting more information about adults getting that booster. What can you tell us about that?
Yeah, the province now providing those numbers on a daily basis, and it's about 16,000 people a day getting their first shot. But really in BC now, we have a different sort of story that we need to tell in terms of where our vaccination campaign is. It isn't just first and second shots that we've talked about all the time, but it's 3 different things. It's people over the age of 5 with 2 doses. Like you said, we're at 85% of the eligible population there. It's the number of people with a 3rd dose. That's about 9.4% of the overall population right now. And then it's those percentage of 5 to 11-year-olds with 1 dose. That's the campaign we just started this week. Still less than 2% of kids got a first dose. The province is hoping that goes up. But when you look at just one day, this is 2 days ago in British Columbia, you see that big number there. The vast majority of vaccine shots given in the province were actually 3rd shots, followed by first shots for kids. And then those numbers that we've been talking about for the past year of those first and second doses, those were a much smaller amount. But it's those 3rd doses that we see way more of over the last week. And Health Minister Adrian Dix says that's only going to increase.
So we're going to see a big uptake in booster doses in January and February, and that's what we've been preparing for. But we wanted to get ahead of schedule. We're ahead of schedule.
And so we'll be tracking those numbers in the weeks and months to come. The province believing it's critical to get as many seniors having those 3rd doses based on what we've seen in other jurisdictions to try and stay ahead of any potential 5th wave in this province.
All right, Justin McElroy, thank you.
Thanks, Anita.
A big day here at CBC Vancouver, our annual Food Bank Day, raising hundreds of thousands of dollars thanks to generous supporters. To understand the impact, we speak with a volunteer who once relied on the food bank to feed his family. That's next. Thanks for staying with us during our commercial-free live stream. A new Canada-wide beauty campaign called Write the Story is working to reclaim the narrative surrounding Indigenous people in the media. It's being done one lipstick at a time through cosmetics company Cheekbone Beauty, and it features the work of a Saskatoon poet and rapper.
I want to tell you that you've had your voice all along, the beat of your heart, the rhythm of your song. Your story belongs to your tongue. We've been hidden and silenced, but we've never been gone.
Activism in the mall is not new. I remember round dancing in the mall in the early Idle No More days, 2013, the same time of year. And I saw myself at that time. And it was a really big moment for me. When Idle No More drifted and Idle No More started to be embodied in people's actions a little more, I wanted to continue the movement.
We've been tricked to believe that our stories are worthless.
This poem came from a really vulnerable place. In Saskatchewan, we were facing a lot of suicides, particularly in Stanley Mission, and I wanted to speak directly to young people. This is a very intimate poem that seeks to draw the attention of young people in a really close-knit way, to remind them that their lives are important, not just for their community and their school and their friend group, but for us as a whole, as Indigenous people. We really do get our inspiration from Indigenous children and youth. And so for that message to be amplified in a popular media platform is really inspiring and motivating.
They tried to take our language, and here we speak.
Today is Food Bank Day here at the CBC. It's our annual day to raise money for the province's food banks at a moment when the demand has never been higher. And what a day it's been so far. We have raised nearly $1.7 million. This is so incredible. We are accepting donations all weekend long. You can go to cbc.ca/foodbankday. And our annual open house and food bank day has been going for 35 years now. And while we are in the middle of a pandemic, we didn't let that get in the way of tradition. Zara Premji takes us through some of the highlights from today, virtual for a second year.
You feel so far away.
Far away again this year, but not too far.
It's been a very, very tough year.
Old traditions have just had to take on new twists.
Yeah, great questions.
For a second year in a row, CBC's Open House and Food Bank Day, much like everything else in the pandemic era, has had to go virtual.
Kind of emotional to see everyone's faces.
Our listeners and viewers heading online to meet some of CBC's personalities and some Olympians too. And going virtual clearly hasn't stopped people making a connection.
We live here and we want to be able to represent the people that live here, so I dream of that.
Nor the generosity and support for the more than 100 food banks across the province.
It's the least we can do this holiday season.
It started in 1986 as an idea.
We just did one of our radio shows, a 2-hour radio show before Christmas that year, and we raised $462.
And it grew into this.
Today, we are sitting on a total contribution over these 35 years of close to $14 million.
And counting.
But there's a reason you're hearing that applause. We have edged over the $1 million. Thank you so much to listeners. Oh my.
And it's true, virtually meeting like this, getting a peek into kitchens and homes of the people we serve.
I love that I'm in your kitchens and living rooms.
And the need for help is only growing.
This past 2 years has been really tough with the pandemic. And then now we add the floods, the recent floods here in BC into that. And I can't imagine how challenging this holiday season will be for some families.
Whether it's in person filling up the newsroom again or virtual like this again, the goal will remain. The dollars will be raised, the connections will be made, and the season of giving, well, it will stay. Zara Premji, CBC News, Vancouver.
Food banks play a pivotal role in sustaining families settling into Canada. They help put food on the table as new immigrants search for jobs while under the constraints of language barriers. Joining us today is Amin Abu Khalaf, a refugee from the Palestinian territories who sought help from the Richmond Food Bank and who eventually became a volunteer himself. Thanks for being with us, Amin.
Thank you.
So you came to Canada with your wife and 3 daughters as refugees back in 2019. Tell me about how you first got help from the food bank in Richmond and what it did for you.
Yes, actually, the first time I came here, I don't have work to do as a new to the country. And I was like, trying to settle down. And then friends and neighbors told me about the food bank. So I went to the location and I met with the supervisor there and I explained to her the situation. She was wonderful and she helped me in a second, right away. She didn't hesitate, she didn't wait, just she understand the situation and saw everything and she rolled me in. And since then, until I get to my work, this food bank was helping us as a family in a very good way. And I do appreciate everything they did for us.
So, I mean, I think I might know the answer to this, but what inspired you to then go back and volunteer yourself?
Yes, because of what happened to me and how much I appreciate the help they did for me and my family. After I get to my job and I settle down and start to making money and in a good situation, I came back to the same supervisor and I told her, listen, I will donate, I will help, I will volunteer, I will do anything to help you, to help the family like me. And she accepted my offer and I was working a part-time volunteer job whenever I have time from my job and just helping them and translate to the new family coming and guide them throughout everything, like exactly what happened to me. And I'm telling you this, the family we help are very, very appreciated and very pleased of what they are getting.
That's incredible, I mean, that you've been able to go back and to share your time with the other families in need. Can you tell me a bit more about that, about those families who come there and who you help? What are they like and what are they looking for?
Yes, so some families were from Syria, you know, a refugee from Syria and refugee from Iraq, and they don't speak too much English. And sometimes we facing ladies by themselves with their kids, with no husband or, you know, so they don't know what to do. I was translating to them and guide them through the supervisor. Her name is Alex. She's wonderful. She is the best. And she was taking care of them, roll them in, and give them the time when to come, what they want to pick, whatever they need. These family were very happy. At least there's food on their table, you know. When you first come to a new country and you know nobody and you don't have a job, you will need somebody to help you. The government of Canada, by providing these kind of things and by everybody who's supporting the food banks, I mean, all the families that a newcomer and they don't know where to go, this is so much help for them.
Amin Abu Khalaf, I think everyone appreciates your help as well. Thank you so much for speaking with us tonight.
Thank you.
New data coming from South Africa suggests even if you've had COVID, you may get the Omicron variant. Why that leaves people much more vulnerable. Next.
It was Food Bank Day in Vancouver, the last one before Christmas, and the second anniversary of handouts to hundreds of needy people in what's supposed to be one of Canada's richest provinces. Organizers were worried there wouldn't be enough to go around, but there was just enough. Karen Webb reports.
In downtown Vancouver, if you look up, you see prosperity. If you look down, you see poverty. Today was Wednesday, Food Bank Day, a week before the welfare checks come out. And the crowds were thicker today because it was the Wednesday before Christmas.
66 to 170.
The lineups were much longer in the suburbs as well. Many of the people who came to the Burnaby Food Bank this morning were the new poor, people who have never been without a job or on welfare before. People like Barbara Hamslip. She lost her job a month ago, and her first unemployment check hasn't come yet. So to feed her 3 children, she turned to welfare and the food bank. Her name has been added to the card file, the growing list of people who might go hungry without the free food.
Things that I would normally have, I don't have now, like, what I used to have. It's pretty hard to take, but, you got to take it, because I'm not the only one that's in this situation. I'm not ashamed to come to food bank. I'm glad that they're there to help people who need it.
When the food bank began 2 years ago, it was supposed to be just a temporary measure, a stopgap. Now it's grown to the point where some weeks there simply isn't enough food to go around.
The most we've ever turned away is 5 to 7, probably 10 people.
With Christmas so close, today was the day the food bank coordinators worried about.
We have made up as many as 40 bags in one day, so no one would go away.
Like the other food banks in the Vancouver area, the Burnaby Food Bank didn't run out. And Barbara Hamslip went through the line. There was enough for her, enough for the others, but only enough. In Burnaby, the volunteers gave out more food than ever before, more than 10 times as much as when the so-called temporary food bank opened. Karen Webb, CBC News, Burnaby, British Columbia.
Let's return to our top story now. As a long and costly cleanup begins around the province and the Fraser Valley, many people in Abbotsford received the news they've anxiously been waiting for. They're finally allowed back home as the city lifts some evacuation orders. As Katie Nicholson tells us, in neighboring Chilliwack, the painstaking effort to get their homes in order has already started.
And his floor got all soaked.
Doug Jewell walks through his soggy, mildewing basement.
But then the water, it comes right up. It soaks right into this stuff, right? Yeah, it's just pumping and pumping and pumping and draining.
Jewell's home was flooded not once, but twice in the last 3 weeks.
Felt like it was like a war I was fighting. And I was hopefully just trying to stay on top of it, right? And now that it's subsided a bit, it just takes a little more off of your chest. You're just, fine, I can breathe for a minute.
Breathe and then rip out carpet and drywall, seal the leaking foundation, and tally the damage. Not far away, follow the blue hose pumping gallons of water outside, and it will lead you here to Peggy Malcolm's basement.
This is groundwater, but it's also overland. It's becoming overland because our storm system has become overwhelmed.
Across the province, flood-ravaged homes, farms, drowned in several feet of murky water, and highways ripped apart. The price tag for repairs
So it is fair to say that it will be very significantly expensive to rebuild our infrastructure and to build it to a higher, more resilient standard.
Between insurance claims, decimated infrastructure, and the unanticipated costs of a choked supply chain, a final tally could take years. The Fort McMurray wildfire is currently Canada's most costly disaster, with some estimates at $10 billion. At least one expert says the BC floods could come close or top that.
This will be one of the largest losses in Canadian history. We're talking about billions of dollars.
And counting, as even today there were new evacuation orders, and on this Chilliwack street, new sandbag dikes, pushing water into a new and unwelcome neighborhood pond feature. Katie Nicholson, CBC News, Vancouver.
Now let's turn to the latest on the Omicron variant. The World Health Organization has stressed again that while concern is warranted, panic is not.
We need to be prepared and cautious. This is something we've been saying from the beginning of the pandemic. Not panic. We have tools. We know what to do. We know what works.
That's the basic message from Canadian health officials, too, as Omicron cases hit at least 13 across 4 provinces so far, including in Ontario, a child under 12 who had recently returned from Southern Africa. Omicron has also been found in at least 9 U.S. states and dozens of countries around the world since its discovery in South Africa last week. There's still a lot we don't know about this variant, like whether it will make people sicker compared to the Delta variant or how effective vaccines will be against it. But one thing we know for sure is that it's on the move in South Africa, where overall COVID cases are shooting up dramatically. Here's Sasha Petrusik on what that could mean.
At the Johannesburg lab, where scientists first noticed Omicron, the race is on to find out more about the startling new variant.
It was a bit disturbing because it made us worry that we were dealing with something new, and because it coincided with an increase in positivity rates.
A huge increase seen most dramatically in crowded Gauteng province that includes Johannesburg. There were 11,500 new cases yesterday in that area alone. That's driven a national surge, which saw South Africa's daily numbers go from about 300 in mid-November into the thousands last week to more than 16,000 cases now. 3/4 of these are infections by Omicron. The fast-moving variant is even reinfecting some of those who've had COVID and recovered. One South African study says it's happening 3 times more than seen before. It also appears that Omicron is more transmissible. That's measured by a virus's so-called R value, with a high number being more dangerous. The original COVID was about 2.5. The Delta variant, 5. Omicron is more than 6. That's led to busier vaccination centres in a country where only about 1/4 are fully vaccinated. But it's not clear yet how much protection that gives against Omicron. So the advice from the World Health Organization?
Now, it's very recommendable that vaccine manufacturers already start planning ahead and plan for the likelihood of having to adjust the vaccine, the existing vaccine. That's good.
In the meantime, hospitals are filling up in South Africa, though doctors say most cases involving Omicron remain mild. Sasha Petrusik, CBC News, Toronto.
And Justin told us earlier how BC is handling booster shots. Today, the federal body that advises provinces on vaccines has issued the widest push yet for that 3rd dose. Wikidopia shows us how such guidance could shore up Canada's defenses against COVID as we head into the holidays.
Vaccinations give us a strong antibody response to protect us from infection, but falling levels may leave Canada vulnerable to another COVID-19 resurgence. So the National Advisory Committee on Immunization says people 50 and up should get a booster, and for adults under that age, they could also get one, depending on local conditions.
We don't want to wait too long because if we wait to get the actual data on, increasing hospitalizations and other lagging indicators, then it'll be too late.
Some provinces haven't waited. They're already giving boosters to younger age groups. Experts say 2 shots still do a good job at protecting people from severe illness, but a third could stop people from even getting infected.
What this will reduce is carriers of SARS-CoV-2 that are circulating in the population, and I think that's a key for helping to control the pandemic.
Widespread boosters are now supported by new data from the UK. The study used several vaccines as boosters in people 30 and up, including the 4 used in Canada. In almost all cases, boosters gave people a higher level of immunity from the coronavirus, including the Alpha and Delta variants, though less effective for people 70 and up.
The third dose can, first of all, give you a much higher antibody level.
The study's lead author says half doses of Pfizer also worked just as well.
Now, for global vaccine supply, that is brilliant because it means that we might be able to immunize 2, 3, or even 4 times as many people with the same amount of vaccine. But clearly, you can't just make those decisions off one study.
And even more doses may be needed down the road. Today, PEI announced some immunocompromised people should get a 4th shot. Provinces concerned about rising cases and the unknowns of Omicron are taking every precaution. Vic Adopia, CBC News, Toronto.
And Ottawa's tighter rules for travelers still seem up in the air. The plan was that all travelers arriving on a direct flight from other countries other than the U.S. must get a test and self-isolate until those results are negative. But Rafi Boudjikanian shows us that's still not happening for a lot of travelers.
4 days after the government announced new rules for most international air travelers, some returning passengers were still learning about them.
Are you a little surprised to hear about it from me now?
A little bit, yeah, to be honest, yeah.
I didn't know until I arrived what would happen. The flight attendants on the plane didn't know what would happen until I arrived.
The government says the rules aren't complicated.
There's an evolving situation and that there are always new information, and we can always, as a government, continue to communicate.
The government's effort to communicate? A series of diagrams. Vaccinated travelers not flying in direct from the U.S. need to get tested on arrival and quarantine until it comes back negative. But right now, many aren't testing or isolating. Some will be tested in spaces like this one at the Ottawa airport. It's not up and running yet. But airports say it would be impossible to test everyone on site.
We're all collectively struggling to understand how we can operationalize this in a way that will keep travelers flowing, keep everybody safe, and avoid those log jams at airports.
Ottawa says there will be take-home tests for some too, but admits it will take time to implement.
We will not be able to test every targeted traveler overnight. It will take a few days until the necessary infrastructure, space, and human resources are in place.
As the holidays approach and people make more travel plans, the federal government is warning the rules may change again. Rafi Boudjikanian, CBC News, Ottawa.
Today is International Day of Persons with Disabilities. An open letter by ambassadors of Manitoba Possible is calling on people to break down misconceptions. And as Alana Cole reports, it's also asking people to work towards an inclusive and accessible society.
Alex Litwin shares videos on social media, a way to tell his story and inspire others.
Yeah, it's through social media that I am able to convey a message of positivity.
Litwin has cerebral palsy. This year, he's an ambassador with Manitoba Possible. In this video, challenging myths and assumptions about accessibility.
There's only one life. I have 2 little babies.
As the world marks the International Day of Persons with Disabilities, he helped write an open letter calling on Manitobans to break down misconceptions and work towards an inclusive society with possibilities for everyone.
So what we wanted to showcase is how awesome disabled people are. No matter what gets in the way, we can always overcome.
Today's a day to really focus on and learn from the experiences of people who are living with disabilities.
Dana Erickson is Manitoba Possible's CEO. He says barriers for people with disabilities continue to exist today.
We have to have people who are in charge of things be thinking about and always reflecting on what are the needs of everyone who we serve, and use that lens to then identify the barriers and remove the barriers that are in front of them, whether it's a communication barrier or a physical barrier.
As for Litwin, as an ambassador, he wants to show Manitobans dreams are always possible. Alana Cole, CBC News, Winnipeg.
At 6:44, a live look at BC Place tonight. And actually, we're looking at the Port of Vancouver. We're going to be maybe getting some snow. Johanna is going to break all of that down with her forecast. That is coming up. And Canada's job market is red hot and has largely recovered after the pandemic dips. Why that's left people looking for employees in a tough spot next. Let's check in again with meteorologist Johanna Wagstaffe. And Joe, I know you're watching this snow situation closely, maybe even two snow situations.
maybe even 3
Oh,
snow
man.
I know, yes, maybe even 3 snow situations. Let me take you to the current temperatures right now because that's really dictating what will happen over the next 12 hours or so. We are getting close to the freezing mark. Port Alberni at the freezing mark, Tofino 3, where we're already starting to see some flakes fly, and 4 for YVR. So getting close to that freezing mark tonight. We're going to see some cooler pockets of air hanging out towards the Fraser Valley. So that's where the higher snow snow amounts are as we get up towards the mountain passes. Could be looking at 15 plus centimeters of snow east of Chilliwack. Now, there was a second surge there. I don't know if you caught that. This is through to Monday afternoon because the second surge will come Sunday night into Monday. And there's actually higher confidence that we'll see snow closer down to sea level. Of course, still some uncertainty because as with any Vancouver snow event, you really have to get down to the sort of 12 to 24 hours before it starts to hone in on those details. But 2 chances of snow over the weekend. And then let me time out the third for you. So here's that first one. This is just straight precip. It's not separating the snow and the rain. But here's Friday overnight into Saturday morning. We actually get a pretty good Saturday afternoon break, could even see the sunshine. And then Sunday night into Monday, a second system slides in from the Pacific, not an atmospheric river, but this Pacific system is colliding with our cooler air. Sinking south for drier weather Tuesday and then Wednesday. There is another chance of another system moving in. And because our Arctic air sticks around, or modified Arctic air, I should say, sticks around all week, any system that moves in, giving us the chance of snow down towards sea level. So it is a La Nina year, which typically means cooler and snowier for us on the south coast. And we'll see that snow make its way across to the interior as well. -5 in through Williams Lake tomorrow. -32 wind chills, I should mention, up towards Fort St. John tomorrow morning. Okay, timing out those 3 events for you. And look how cool those afternoon and overnight lows are. So a 5 tomorrow, which is a couple degrees below our afternoon high of 7. We've got the wet snow rain mix lingering through to about 10 a.m. and then clearing out. And then Sunday, really overnight, sort of pre-dawn hours into Monday morning. So we'll be watching that one closely. That could hinder sort of morning commutes. And then Wednesday, the third system. Unfortunately, things seem to be coming in 3s here, Anita, but luckily low impact until that Wednesday event. You know I'll be watching.
Yeah, absolutely. And today was extremely cold, I thought. So I guess I better bundle up.
Get the layers ready, Anita. I always think of you when it dips below freezing. It's time.
Thanks, Joe.
You're welcome.
Now, some new numbers on Canada's job market. Canada has added 154,000 new jobs in November. That's a percentage point higher than February of last year before COVID hit. And the unemployment rate dropped to a pandemic low of just 6%. As Jacqueline Hansen reports, it's great for job seekers, but hiring is a whole other story.
Erica Albert lost her job during the second wave of COVID. The finance company she worked for downsized.
Well, there were many scary moments.
Finding a new position as an office manager mid-pandemic wasn't easy.
With COVID and lockdowns, office managers often need to be in an office. So I decided that I was going to reassess a little further.
So she wrote a book, and despite its title, she took her time searching for her dream job, something local with the flexibility to work from home. That finally came.
I actually just started on Monday. Yay.
Statistics Canada says more than 8 in 10 women aged 25 to 54 are now working. That is a record high, and most of the jobs they gained in November were full-time.
I think this is the effect of the newly implemented flexible work arrangements.
This economist says there are also other factors behind the jump in new jobs for both men and women, including the end of CRB in October. Plus,
we're finally seeing the effect of the reopening economy, of people's demand for goods and services being met.
Every sector right now is looking for talent.
This recruiter says it has become a candidate's market, so much so that while companies are optimistic about the economic recovery, they're also worried
about whether or not they'll be able to compete in a market that is looking for talent all at the same time.
That competition is driving up some wages. StatsCan says wage growth overall is just keeping up with inflation, but new hires are getting paid even more. Meanwhile, Albert is looking forward to her first paycheck in nearly a year.
It's definitely going to be a lot more than what EI offers, I'll say that.
And a new start that she hopes was worth the wait. Jacqueline Hansen, CBC News, Toronto.
Well, this menorah has gone mobile, bringing light to the dark streets of Winnipeg. The Hanukkah of the highway is next.
Demand has been huge. The largest demand that we've ever seen, at least. We started with 750 trees and we're down to about 120 left. So, that's over a course of about 10 days selling 600 trees. Really, supply is the issue, and supply hasn't really kept up with that demand. This crop can take 6, 7, 8 years or longer to grow. And so if they didn't adjust their numbers, 10 years ago, then to catch up to it is really hard. The suppliers are finding huge losses when they're going to sell the trees. We had an order we placed in June, for example. Come September, when they're ready to kind of go in the fields and see how the order's looking, they found 20 to 50% of the trees were unsellable. The issues we're seeing in BC, definitely forest fires, flooding recently that we've been seeing, has an issue with not only production of available land to produce trees, but it's transportation too. That will all have a ripple effect going forward in the Christmas tree industry, as well as the horticultural industry. BC is the heart of the horticultural industry in Canada. Trees just aren't going to magically appear, and there's not a lot of new tree farms opening. So it's going to be a little bit of an issue in the short term, and especially an issue for this year. I mean, we would love to have trees for the next 2 weeks to have for our customers, to keep that tradition alive, to have that fresh tree for people that have been buying from us for years. But unfortunately, probably by the weekend, we may not have any trees left to sell.
It's Christmas myth-busting time. I'm Rob Sproul at Salisbury. Today, our most common question, will poinsettias kill me or my child or my pet? And the answer is no, they will not. That's a myth that goes back over 100 years ago. 1919, a little girl in the States died, and they attributed it to the poinsettia leaves. The reason for all the fear is this. It's this milky white sap. Okay, it has latex in it. All euphorbia, that's the family, have this kind of sap. It's a huge family. In some species, abrasive to the skin. In some species, it is very dangerous. Poinsettias are not. If you or your toddler or your pet eat a handful of leaves, they'll probably get nauseous and throw up. That's normal. But it would literally take a massive amount to make them sick. So, myth busted. What is dangerous, however? Holly berries, mistletoe berries. The berries are extremely dangerous on those plants. So if you have kids or pets, consider artificials if you're looking for those things in your decor. The most common problem people have with poinsettias is by watering them too much, otherwise known as loving them too much. They're from an arid region of Mexico, so you want to keep them on, definitely on the dry side in between watering. You don't have to fertilize them, that's all been done already. And you want to keep them away from cold drafts, away from the front door drafts, away from the heat register drafts, because that heat's going to go up and just desiccate the leaves. When you're choosing a poinsettia, pro tip, look in the middle, and you want those buds to be closed, and preferably not very many open, and definitely not black. And it'll keep its color all through December, and you can just enjoy it right through Christmas.
Today is the Food Bank Day here at CBC, raising money for the province's food banks at a time when the demand has never been higher. And what a day it has been so far. We have raised $1,692,000 so far. We're accepting donations all weekend long. You can go to cbc.ca/foodbankday. Well, Jewish people across the world and right here in Canada are celebrating Hanukkah. That includes a Winnipeg synagogue creatively bringing joy and light to the community with the help of a mobile menorah. Have a look.
So we're here with the Menorah Mobile, going up and down the streets of Winnipeg, sharing the warmth and joy and message of Hanukkah. Getting a lot of positive response, people smiling, waving, dancing in the windows. It's really a wonderful thing to be able to share this with the residents of Winnipeg. The menorah has 8 lights on it. You'll see there's one taller one. That's the one that lights all the other candles. We start off on the first night with 1 candle, second night 2 candles. And as you can see tonight, we're at the 5th candle, the 5th night. So that taller one there is the one that lights the others as it shares its warmth. Another lesson we have from the flame is a tiny little flame can light up such a vast area. The entire room becomes light with just one little candle. So too, just that little act of goodness. When we do that, we'll be able to share so much positivity, so much goodness. And no matter what the person is celebrating, the message that we have from Hanukkah, that idea of adding the light, is something that is universal.
Abad Lubavitch wishes you and yours a happy Hanukkah.
Love that for sure. Okay, thanks again for being with us tonight and for supporting our annual Food Bank Day. Again, you can continue donating all weekend. The website is cbc.ca/foodbankday, and we really appreciate your support. Have a good weekend.